You know that feeling. The one where there's something you know you should be doing. Maybe it's that report for work, studying for an exam, starting that creative project, or even just doing the laundry. It's important. You know it is. You might even want to do it, deep down. But you just don't. Instead, you find yourself scrolling through social media, watching random videos, tidying things that don't need tidying, or suddenly feeling an urgent need to reorganize your spice rack. You're not being lazy, not exactly. You're actively avoiding the important task by doing something else. This isn't just putting something off, this is procrastination. And if you're watching this, chances are you're intimately familiar with this frustrating cycle. You delay, you feel guilty or anxious, the deadline looms or the opportunity fades, you rush or abandon the task, and then you promise yourself you won't do it again. But often, the cycle repeats. It feels like a simple lack of discipline, doesn't it? Like you just don't have enough willpower. But what if it's something deeper? What if it's not just about being lazy, but about complex psychological wiring and even fundamental philosophical questions about how we relate to time, duty, and action? That's what we're going to explore today. We'll dive into what psychology tells us about why we procrastinate, look at how philosophy, from ancient Stoics to modern existentialists, has grappled with the problem of inaction, and then build a bridge between these two powerful fields to find real, practical ways to stop delaying and start doing. So, let's begin by looking inside our own minds. Psychology offers some incredibly useful insights into the root causes of procrastination, and it turns out, it's often less about managing time and more about managing our emotions and our mindset. One of the leading psychological views is that procrastination is fundamentally an emotional regulation problem, not a time management problem. Think about it, you have a task that makes you feel something negative, maybe it's boring, difficult, overwhelming, or it triggers a fear of failure or judgment. To escape that uncomfortable feeling right now, your brain seeks immediate relief. And what's easier than diving into a challenging task? Doing something pleasant or distracting instead. This gives you temporary relief, a brief hit of dopamine from the easier activity, but it reinforces the avoidance behavior in the long run. You're essentially trading long-term well-being for short-term comfort. Closely linked to this is the fear of failure or perfectionism. If you're afraid you won't do something perfectly, or even just well enough, it feels safer not to try at all. Or you delay starting because, now isn't the perfect time, or, I don't have all the resources I need. This isn't about being lazy, it's about protecting your self-esteem from the potential blow of not meeting impossibly high standards. The anxiety about failing becomes a barrier to starting. Another major factor is present bias or temporal discounting. Our brains are wired to value immediate rewards over future rewards, and immediate comfort over future benefits. The negative consequences of procrastinating, stress, poor outcome, missed opportunity, feel far away when you're deciding not to start a task. The immediate pleasure of scrolling your phone feels very real and very close. Our future self feels like a stranger, and we often burden that stranger with the difficult tasks. Future me will handle it, we think, conveniently ignoring that future me is just our present self later. Overwhelm is another psychological hurdle. If a task is too big, too complex, or too vague, our brain doesn't know where to start. This leads to feelings of helplessness, which can trigger avoidance as a coping mechanism. It's easier to do nothing than to face a massive, shapeless challenge. Sometimes, we even hold on to beliefs that are psychologically unhelpful, like, I work best under pressure. While a little bit of pressure can provide a deadline, relying on last-minute panic often leads to lower quality work, more stress, and doesn't teach us how to manage tasks effectively in the first place. This belief is often a rationalization for the underlying emotional avoidance. So, psychology helps us understand the internal mechanisms, the emotional avoidance, the fears, the biases, the overwhelm, that make us delay. But what does philosophy have to say about the act of delaying, the value of action, and our relationship with time? Philosophy has pondered the nature of action, inaction, and our duties for millennia. Let's look at a few perspectives. The Stoics, for example, placed great emphasis on action and using our time wisely. Figures like Seneca, a Roman Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively on the brevity of life and how we squander it. He argued that we are generous with our time, treating it as if it's limitless, yet time is the one thing we can never get back. For the Stoics, focusing on what you can control, your intentions, your effort, your judgments, was paramount. Procrastination, from a Stoic viewpoint, involves fixating on external outcomes, fear of failure, judgment, that you can't fully control, while neglecting the one thing you can control, your own action in the present moment. They emphasized praxis, virtuous action, as central to living a good life. Delaying necessary action based on fear or comfort would be seen as a failure to live in accordance with reason and virtue. From a different angle, Immanuel Kant's deontological ethics emphasizes duty. If you have a task you ought to do, whether it's a professional obligation or a personal commitment, Kant would argue there is a moral imperative to act based on rational principle, not on fleeting feelings of comfort or discomfort. Procrastinating on a duty is, in a Kantian sense, a failure of rationality and moral will. Aristotle, even earlier, discussed the concept of akrasia, often translated as weakness of will. This is the state of acting against your better judgment. You know what you should do, study for the exam, but you fail to do it, choosing something less beneficial, watching TV, instead. Aristotle sought to understand this disconnect between knowledge and action, a problem that resonates deeply with the experience of procrastination. And in Existentialism, figures like Jean-Paul Sartre highlight our radical freedom. Every moment is a choice. To procrastinate is not to avoid choosing, it is to choose inaction. It's a choice to remain in a state of inauthenticity, avoiding the responsibility that comes with acting and creating yourself through your deeds. While this perspective can feel daunting, it also holds immense power, the power to choose differently in the next moment. Now, here's where psychology and philosophy don't just sit side by side, they intersect and amplify each other. Psychology gives us the map of the minefield. It identifies the specific emotional triggers, cognitive biases, and internal states that lead us into procrastination. It tells us how the trap works. Philosophy, on the other hand, provides the compass and the motivation. It offers frameworks for why taking action, managing our response to difficulty, and using our time well are important aspects of living a meaningful and virtuous life. It tells us why escaping the trap matters beyond just productivity. For instance, psychology reveals that fear of failure paralyzes us. Stoicism offers the philosophical attitude of focusing solely on your effort and intention, what you control, rather than the outcome, what you don't. Combining these means using psychological techniques to manage the feeling of fear, e.g., challenging irrational thoughts about failure, while simultaneously adopting the Stoic perspective that your worth is in your effort, not the result, which reduces the power of that fear. Or, psychology points out our present bias, making immediate comfort irresistible. Philosophy, especially Stoicism and Existentialism, emphasizes the preciousness of time and the weight of each moment's choice. Understanding the psychological pull helps you predict when you'll be tempted, while the philosophical insight provides a powerful reason to resist that pull, because each delayed moment is a moment of your finite life you're trading for fleeting comfort. So, how do we use this combined understanding to actually stop procrastinating? It's not about magically gaining infinite willpower. It's about strategic action and adopting a more resilient mindset. First, from a psychological standpoint, we need to address the emotional core. Instead of avoiding the negative feelings associated with a task, try to approach them with curiosity and self-compassion. Mindfulness can help you observe the feeling without getting swept away by it. Ask yourself, what emotion am I trying to avoid right now? Fear? Boredom? Overwhelm? Simply acknowledging the emotion can lessen its power. Break down the task. Psychology tells us large tasks are overwhelming. Philosophy reminds us that any great journey begins with a single step, a common maxim, though often attributed to Lao Tzu, it fits the practical wisdom tradition. Break your daunting task into the smallest possible first step. Not write the report, but write the first paragraph outline, or even just open the report document. Small wins build momentum and reduce the feeling of overwhelm. Manage your environment and triggers. Psychology knows our context matters. Turn off notifications, close unnecessary tabs, move to a different room. Make the desired behavior, working on the task, easier and the undesired behavior, getting distracted, harder. Now, let's add the philosophical layer to strengthen these strategies. Adopt a Stoic attitude towards the difficulty or boredom of the task. Remind yourself that discomfort is often a necessary part of worthwhile pursuits. Your goal isn't to feel good while doing it, your goal is to do it, because doing it aligns with your values or duties. Focus your mental energy not on how unpleasant the task is, but on simply performing the action itself, moment by moment. Just do the next right thing, as a simpler phrase captures this. Use the philosophical perspective on time as a motivator. Seneca asked, "Why do we hesitate? Life, if you know how to use it, is long." Each act of procrastination is literally using up your finite life on something you deem less valuable than the task you're avoiding. Let the awareness of time's passage propel you into action, not into panic, but into deliberate use of the present moment. Reframe action itself as a virtue. From an Aristotelian or Stoic perspective, acting on your intentions, fulfilling your responsibilities, and pursuing your goals are not just means to an end, they are part of living a virtuous life, a life of flourishing, eudaimonia. Each time you choose action over delay, you are reinforcing the kind of person you want to be, someone who is capable, responsible, and engaged with reality. Procrastination isn't a moral failing, but understanding the ethical and philosophical implications of how we use our time and fulfill our commitments can provide a powerful reason to engage with the psychological strategies. In conclusion, procrastination is a complex human behavior, deeply rooted in our psychology, our struggles with emotional regulation, fear, and biases. But it's also a phenomenon that touches on fundamental philosophical questions about duty, freedom, time, and the nature of a good life. By understanding the psychological traps, we can approach them with awareness and specific techniques. By integrating philosophical perspectives, we can find deeper motivation, reframe our relationship with difficulty and time, and see action not just as a means to complete a task, but as an expression of our values and our will. It's not about being a perfect machine that never delays. It's about becoming more aware of why you delay and equipping yourself with both the psychological tools and the philosophical mindset to choose action more often, aligning your behavior with your intentions and building a life of greater purpose and less stress. So, the next time you feel that urge to put something off, pause. Ask yourself what emotion you're avoiding. Then, bring to mind the philosophical value of taking action in this moment. Choose one small step. And take it. Thank you for joining me in exploring this intersection of mind and meaning. If you found this useful, please consider subscribing for more discussions on how psychology and philosophy can help us navigate the challenges of being human. What are your biggest struggles with procrastination? Share your thoughts in the comments below.